Good afternoon. Welcome to the first Public Information Center for the Coldwater Wastewater Treatment Plant Expansion Class Environmental Assessment. My name is Suzanne Troxler, and I'm an environmental engineer with Tatham Engineering Limited. Our project team includes Robin DeDuro and Drew DeDuro, who are assisting me today with this session. We're conducting this Public Information Center both in person and virtually, and we'll be taking questions from both audiences after the presentation. And this presentation will be uploaded to the Township website. Before we start, though, we would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is part of the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, who have been caring for this land. We are grateful for the opportunity to work here. We give our respects to its first inhabitants. We will start with the reason for this study. The Township retained Tatham to conduct this class environmental assessment because Coldwater is projected to grow significantly over the next 20 years. Coldwater is served by a wastewater treatment plant, which does not have the capacity to treat all of the wastewater that is associated with this increase in population. And the main pumping station that pumps the wastewater to the treatment plant also has insufficient pumping capacity. This study aims to find the preferred solution to this wastewater capacity problems, considering engineering, environmental, social, and cultural factors, in consulting with the public, stakeholders, and review agencies. This first PIC is to explain the problem or opportunity and present the alternative solution so that we can obtain your input. So this study follows the Municipal Class Environmental Assessment Process, or Class EA for short, which is mandated by the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks for potential municipal infrastructure. So the process aims to ensure that we consider all potential impacts and factors before we start designing a municipal project. So the municipal Class A process for a wastewater treatment plant has 5 phases. And the first phase is defining the problem. For this project, phase 1 was determining how much wastewater treatment capacity would be required. We will go over this today. The second phase, which is where we're at now, is to identify alternative solutions and assessing them to select the preferred one. We'll also explain those today. The third phase will be to identify alternative design concepts for this preferred solution. We will have a second Public Information Center to present those design concepts in phase 3. And then the fourth phase is to prepare the study report and getting and incorporating comments that we've received. After this, the project can move to implementation, which means design, then construction. Properties in Coldwater are serviced by a network of sanitary sewers and 5 pumping stations shown as red dots on this plan. They convey the wastewater to the main pumping station, which is located at the intersection of River Street and Upper Chute Road. From there, the wastewater is pumped to the Coldwater Sewage Treatment Plant, which is shown as the orange rectangle on this figure. A few technical details. The main sewage pumping station is a below-ground station that consists of a circular wet well with 3 submersible pumps. The Coldwater Wastewater Treatment Plant consists of 2 package treatment plants. The older one is what we call an extended aeration activated sludge plant, and the newer one, built in 2006, applies the same treatment process but is done in batch mode. It's called a sequencing batch reactor. The incoming sewage flow is split between the 2 plants, and both plants include alum addition for phosphorus removal. The combined effluent from the 2 plants is disinfected by ultraviolet light. And the final treated and disinfected effluent is discharged via a 400-meter long outfall pipe to the Coldwater River. The biosolids that are produced during the treatment of the wastewater are aerobically digested and stored on site until they're taken to be applied on land by an approved contractor. The Coldwater Wastewater Treatment Plant has an average daily flow rated capacity of 921 meter cube a day. It can handle short-term peak flows of up to about 3,000 meter cube a day. However, the peak capacity of the main pumping station is about half of that at 1,600 meter cube a day, which has caused operational issues to the township in the past, requiring hauling of wastewater from the pumping station to the treatment plant. Based on the data for the past 5 years, the wastewater treatment plant has been operating at 63% of its rated capacity, and the peak flow days used up 74% of its maximum hydraulic capacity. So there is residual capacity at the wastewater treatment plant, but not at the main pumping station. Now we will go into the projections for population growth. We're working with the projections that the township planners have developed based on the properties that have current allocations and other properties that have submitted applications for development or are anticipated to submit applications for development. This plan shows the areas that were included in the population projections. In terms of numbers, though, Coldwater has an existing population of 1,500 persons, including the lands that have been allocated capacity at the wastewater treatment plant. The short-term projected equivalent population is about 2,000 people. And included in this is the equivalent population from commercial or industrial lands. The township anticipates that in the next 10 years, the equivalent population will increase by about 1,700 people. And ultimately, in more than 20 years, at build out to the limits of Coldwater settlement boundaries, the wastewater treatment plant may need to serve a population of approximately 8,000 persons. So to convert this projected equivalent population to a wastewater flow, we analyzed the historical flow data at the wastewater treatment plant. And we found that in the past 5 years, the average wastewater generation rate was 387 liters per person per day, which is a pretty typical number. So on that basis, we decided to use 400 liters per person per day for planning purposes. And as there is a significant amount of water from rain and snow melt that makes its way into the sanitary sewers, we've applied a conservative factor of 4 times the average flow to estimate the peak flows that occur in the spring and during wet weather events. So when we apply these criteria to the projected population, we find that the existing wastewater treatment plant can accommodate the existing and allocated population, the 2,000 people. It will operate at about 88% of its rated capacity. However, there isn't enough capacity for the projected growth in the next 10 years. There will be a deficit. And considering the build out of Coldwater, ultimately, the required capacity would be about 3,300 meter cube a day. So based on these numbers and an anticipated rate of growth, a 2-phase expansion would be logical. The first phase would be planned so that it has sufficient capacity to accommodate the next 20 years of growth. The wastewater treatment plant capacity would be increased from 921 meter cube a day to 2,400 meter cube a day. And an expansion phase would be implemented when needed to accommodate further growth, which at this point is projected to require a capacity of 3,300 meter cube a day. Up to now, we've talked about capacity. Now we would like to present the performance of the Coldwater Wastewater Treatment Plant. The wastewater treatment plant operates under an approval from the Ministry of the Environment that states the required treated effluent quality, which was determined based on the receiver, the Coldwater River. The wastewater treatment plant consistently meets its effluent quality limits as well as its objectives. For example, the effluent cannot contain more than 15 milligrams per liter of suspended solids in BOD and must make best efforts to be below 10 milligrams per liter. Historically, the wastewater treatment plant produces an effluent of about 7 milligrams milligrams per liter suspended solids and 3 milligrams per liter BOD. The approval document also limits how much phosphorus, ammonia, and fecal bacteria can be discharged. The wastewater treatment plant has met these criteria consistently. For this study, we measured the water quality in the Coldwater River over 4 seasons in 2021 and 2022 at 6 locations. 3 monitoring locations were upstream of the outfall and 3 were downstream of the outfall. And the sampling locations were the same as where the water quality was measured 30 years ago. The data shows that the water quality in the river has not changed substantially in the past 30 years, and that the wastewater treatment plant outfall has a fairly small effect on the river water quality. We noted that the dissolved oxygen concentration is lower downstream of the outfall in both data sets. However, it's still at a high level at 10 milligrams per liter. The phosphorus concentration in the river is lower than it was before and remains below the provincial water quality objectives to prevent algae growth. The ammonia concentration is also lower than before. The unionized ammonia, which can be toxic to aquatic life, is well below the provincial water quality objectives. To ensure that a wastewater treatment plant expansion would continue to have minimal impacts on the water quality of the Coldwater River, the effluent quality will need to improve proportionately with the effluent flow, and the currently approved loading limits can be maintained. For example, the wastewater treatment plant is currently not allowed to discharge an effluent that contains more than 0.3 milligrams per liter of phosphorus. Now, this limit will likely need to be more stringent at 0.13 milligram per liter and ultimately 0.09 milligram per liter, so that the quantity of phosphorus discharged from the wastewater treatment plant does not increase as the flow increases. In other words, an expansion of the wastewater treatment plant will likely involve a higher level of treatment than is currently applied. So the previous slides presented the parameters of a wastewater treatment plant that could handle the projected growth in cold water. But the Classier process needs to consider a wide range of alternative solutions. The following alternative solutions were considered. Do nothing, which for this project means limiting growth in cold water to what the existing wastewater treatment plant can handle. Reduce wastewater flows. This can be done to a certain extent by reducing water consumption in the house and by fixing the sewers so that less groundwater and rainwater enters them and use up the capacity that could be used to service more homes. Third, expand the existing wastewater treatment plant and sewage pumping station on their current sites. 4, build a new wastewater treatment plant on the existing site and expand the main pumping station on its site. So this would involve building a brand new facilities, then decommission the existing facilities in part or in full. And 5, build a brand new wastewater treatment plant on a new site, but continue to expand the main pumping station on its site. We've prepared a detailed comparison matrix for each of these alternative solutions for a wide range of evaluation criteria. This table here is a summary of this matrix. In summary, our assessment to date is that the do-nothing option does not address the problem statement, so it's not the right solution. Reducing wastewater flows is needed, but it isn't sufficient on its own to generate the capacity that is required for the anticipated growth. It should be part of the solution, however. Alternative 3, expanding the wastewater treatment plant and pumping station on their current sites would be feasible. As the site is already disturbed, further construction could occur without major environmental impacts. It would make use of existing infrastructure, so we would have lower costs. And all the costs would be for growth, therefore not paid by existing residents. Building a new wastewater treatment plant on the existing site or on a new site would have more potential for environmental impacts. On the existing site, it would be more difficult to avoid the wooded areas, and on the new site, it would involve clearing some land. And this alternative would not make use of the infrastructure we have now. Therefore, it would be more costly. However, an advantage of building new is that there would be more opportunity to design more energy efficiency and more resiliency to climate change. Overall, at this time, before input from residents and stakeholders, we considered a preliminary preferred solution to be alternative 3, where we expand the wastewater treatment plant and pumping station on their existing sites, plus alternative 2, which would be to implement inflow and infiltration control measures to reduce flows. We need your input, opinion, comments, concerns about what we have presented today so that we can incorporate them in the evaluation and select a preferred solution. Your written comments should be forwarded to us within the next 2 weeks. There's a comment form here to fill, or you can send your comments via the Township website, or you can mail or email them to Tatham or the Township at the addresses in the notice. Thank you for attending this Public Information Center. We would be happy to answer any questions you have.